Not
All
great,
right.
I know. But
And we're live. Hello. Welcome to Media Studies. It's a kickback Saturday edition. I'm here with Sabby Reyes Cole Carney. How are you, Sabby?
I am fantastic. I got the Santa Claus go straight to the ghetto in my head. That's the vibe right now.
On this very, very cold, snowy Western New York day.
Beautiful, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I spent a good part of the morning digging out the driveway and shoveling the sidewalk and pathways and stuff like that. What'd you do?
I was not doing manual labor like that. So
Oh, come on. Well, why not?
I was getting the links ready for this episode.
Okay. All right. And I have the links, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they're in the Google Doc I added you to.
Okay. Let me check that. I don't know that I get a notification for that one, but all right. So let's start with Finn McKenty. Who is he?
He is the founder of a popular music YouTube channel named the Punk Rock MBA, who, the channel specialized in mostly in like metal, punk, metalcore, hardcore, and he would do these long form videos that were actually really informative, about different scenes, different movements in music. Like he would talk about pop punk, certain types of hardcore, ska, like trends that would like rise and then fall. And that's like his big thing. And recently he appeared on an interview on the Jesse Lee podcast, which is another
Shout out
YouTube channel.
Jesse Lee.
Who the YouTube short that Jesse Lee is using as the trailer for that long form interview, Finn comes out and says, "I'm not interested in music. I was only doing it for the money, and I reached a certain financial goal, and I figure, I sent you this clip and we can watch it. Why, you only have a limited time on this earth. You shouldn't spend it doing shit you don't want to do." And so this has caused naturally a stir. People are in their feelings, calling Finn a grifter, and even Anthony Fantano, who I would say is probably still the biggest music critic channel that I know of. I mean, he is, I would say without reservation, like the most well-known popular music critic on earth, and it isn't even close. But, Anthony Fantano did a video taking what Finn said at face value, like, "Oh, I can't believe he was doing this. It's not a good look if he was doing this and wasn't really invested and was only doing it for marketing, because Finn's specialty is marketing." The moment I saw that clip, I don't believe he wasn't interested in music. I think there's something else going on here, which we can get into.
I sent you a message in our chat. I can't find that Google Doc. It's not in my email.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, but I'll lay out how I came about him. I didn't know who Punk Rock MBA was at all. I had no clue other than a couple days ago, and I saw Fantano's reaction to him, and my inclination was not any level of surprise because of how I see media, and we can get into that a little bit later. I have a more clinical perspective when it comes to content creators than most people do. I think that most people are creating content for a reason. It's not just, and love is a minor one. They're building things because they have goals, because they have aims. And I could see someone with a marketing background who wanted to create uh, a portfolio of success from them. Uh, it wouldn't work in like drop it in like the chat or
Okay, I emailed it to you too, but I'll drop it in the chat. Yep.
Yeah, like
No problem.
I don't know why it's not coming through on the email.
No problem.
Yeah.
So you were
Yeah.
saying the marketing portfolio.
Yeah. So like someone, especially with a marketing background, I'm opening it up now. Okay. All right. So um, someone with a marketing background, I could see them coming to a conclusion where they want to create a living content portfolio that yes, I can build a YouTube channel from scratch, have a high level success, and then I can go turn around and sell that product. And I can see that logic. I'm assuming that's what he's going to do next, or a variation of that theme, where he can say, "Hey, I can sell you this at a high ticket, and this is a living, breathing proof of how I did it, and I can help you do it too."
He claims in this new interview that he only looked at Wikipedia for his research. That's just, if you go back and watch his videos, there's no way
I
that
watched
was what he
several.
was doing.
I believe
He
it.
wasn't just doing it on Wikipedia. I would
believe
bet
it.
my life. Hold on a second. I would bet my come close to betting my life on this. This guy is not just somebody who came at music from marketing. If you followed his history, because you just heard about him.
Yeah. No,
Yes,
I watched a few of his videos.
right. But you came about him recently through Fantano. Now,
Yeah.
there's some
Yeah.
background to it too.
And then I watched about 6 or 7 of his videos.
How recent were they? Because there's
Yeah, pretty recent.
okay, because this, where he's at now, he has come to gradually, and he has signaled in the past burnout and a dissatisfaction with being limited in the topics he can talk about. There's a clip from 8 months ago where his tone is very different, where he comes right out and admits, because he reads user fan comments, and one of them's like, "Oh, is this going to be your 1,000th video on new metal?" And he's like, "I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I don't think my videos on new metal are all that. We should show the clip when you get it's labeled in the document when you're able to get that set up." And apologies, folks, we had some technical glitches before getting on, but
Yeah, no worries.
but he's much more. His tone is much more believable in that clip. This stone face, like, yeah, I just did it for the money. Again, I think there's something going on there, and I'll get into my theories. That looks like here. That feels like was shot here. I don't think it was, but that might as well be like North Clinton or Clifford have
Yeah.
or something.
Okay, which McKenty do you want me to tee up?
Let's go with with Jesse Lee's short. It's the top
Okay, the short trailer.
after the James Brown clips. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the trailer for the interview. That basically gives it everything away right there.
Yep. All right. We'll be there in a moment.
And then we'll compare that to the video Finn posted 8 months ago.
Okay.
Which is time queued. I queued it up to the spot for you. The second one.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
I love Santa Claus. Go straight to the ghetto. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, here we go. I got the short video.
JB looking like Andy Capp over here.
Okay. And here we go.
anything on YouTube.
Finn is one of the OGs in music content creation, and he's gained millions of views on his punk rock NBA channel and his second solo channel. So why did he suddenly stop?
I don't really have any interest in music. I was just doing it for the money, and I hit my financial goals. Our time on this earth is limited. Like, don't spend it doing shit you don't have to do if you don't want to, you know? So I don't have to keep making videos about System of a Down.
Also on the show, we talk about whether bands are really to blame for high ticket prices, the powerful effects of nostalgia, how he now helps others grow on LinkedIn.
Oh, wait, this is interesting too.
Biggest tips to making
What?
This is interesting too. Sorry, this next part right here is interesting too.
your videos go viral.
The amount of views that any video is going to get is going to be a product of two things. Number one, topic is the most important thing. Of course, title and thumbnail and stuff like that's important too, but topic is the number one thing. And then how is sort of the second.
To blame
Right,
for
so he bleeped that out so that you
powerful
watch
effects of nostalgia, how he now helps others grow on LinkedIn and YouTube, and he also shared his 2 biggest tips to making your videos go viral.
The amount of views that any video is going to get is going to be a product of two things. Number one, topic is the most important thing. Of course, title and thumbnail and stuff like that's important too, but topic is the number one thing. And then how is sort of the second part of that.
Why did Finn McKenty?
Okay. You don't buy it.
No, I think he has indicated in the past that he like I said, the tone of the video he posted 8 months ago was very different than this, and just the way he came across as personable. He talked about he sees himself as being probably on the autism spectrum. He would post pictures of him and his girlfriend, now wife, and the mother of his child on vacation in the past. This wasn't somebody who I felt was faking engagement. And I thought back to some of the videos where he talked about actually seeing certain bands. Yes, you can go into a space and very sort of superficially hoover up details and talk about things on a superficial level. There's no way you could do it to the degree that he did it without being interested. What was obvious to his following, though, was that over time, he got into a rut talking about the same topics over and over and over, and seemed much less invested over time, to the point where you get to this video 8 months ago where he comes flat out and says, yeah, I don't think my recent videos on new metal are all that original or even very good, and just flat out admits it and says the reason I keep making them is because people keep watching them. And he goes further and diagnoses a bigger issue with the internet. What I think is happening here is he got burnt on playing this role, felt like he was in a rut, kept doing it longer than his passion, way longer than his passion wore out for this, and got resentful of the people who criticized him, and is now going out with a bang so that those people start crying and feel, all, start moaning and groaning online. Oh my God, he was a grifter. He lied to me. What terrible. That's terrible. That's terrible. I think that's his revenge, because they actually believe, I call this reverse catfishing, where he's now playing the role of a villain that I don't think he actually was at all. There's no way you can go into this music realm, do this the way he did, and be totally cynical. You can actually tell certain videos where he's like talking about a music scene he's not that interested in, it comes across. But when he's talking about like the first time he saw Korn live, I'd be shocked if he was lying. Somebody else has a video where I also linked you to.
Before we jump ahead, let's slow down.
Okay.
All right. Let's hear from the horse's mouth. And I'll give you my retort.
Oh, volume.
So this one here, this person said, your ability to make so many videos out of one topic is truly a talent. I watch and enjoy them all. I look forward to seeing your 1000th video on the state of new metal 10 years from now. I can't tell whether this person is like joking or whether they're trying to dunk on me for making so many videos about nu metal. Either way, I mean, it is valid. I have made a ton of videos about nu metal, and I do not think that they are particularly original or exciting or amazing or anything like that. The reason why I keep making them is because people keep watching them. And you can see there's 150 likes on this, which is kind of a lot. So I mean, clearly people are saying, well, all right, well, maybe you've made a few too many videos about nu metal. I love you, Finn, but I have noticed, correctly or otherwise, that you seem to be getting tired. Am I wrong? Or you think of taking things in a different direction at any point? I'm not going to take things in a different direction. Yes, I am very tired, but no, I'm not going to take things in a different direction. And I will talk about that in just a second. Here's one that's a little bit less charitable. This guy said, I feel like this channel has officially run out of things to talk about, rehashed content, getting kind of stale, to be honest. Where's the remote? The first question I have is, do you have a remote control for your phone? I like that. I would like to get a remote control for my phone. I think that'd be pretty helpful. I made a video the other day or a couple of weeks ago called like why metal peaked in the 2000s. And a lot of people basically made the comment of like, haven't you made this video before? And they're right. And I think this guy is right too. I have run out of things to talk about. I think my content absolutely is rehashed, and I think it's stale too. And I'm not super happy about that. I'm not. I mean, I think these people have a valid point. The thing is that, and again, I'm not complaining about this. I don't want to say like poor me or anything like that. But the thing with the internet is that it wants you to be extremely specialized. It wants you to just do one thing, right? Like think about on TikTok, if there's someone that, I don't know, makes videos of them like cutting things with a chainsaw. Well, they can't do anything other than cut things with a chainsaw. Like they can't make a video about food or TikTok about food. You know, they can't talk about their life. You see this when people are known for one thing and then they do something else, then their views drop. Right? Their views drop like crazy. And that's the same thing for me. You know, I've been making videos for 7 years. Like, to be honest, I think my content used to be better. I used to take a lot more chances, but basically what I used to talk a lot about a lot more like newer artists and stuff like that back in say 2018, 2019, even maybe like 2020. But what I realized is that whenever I talked about something new, it would get lower views and negative comments. And
Okay. I want to pause it there. Just a couple things. Anybody who watched this last weekend basically heard me make a similar argument, basically about where media is now. It's narrow and it's deep. And he's absolutely right that algorithms punish you for being a generalist. Being a generalist is not the way to create platforms in this era. Like they want you to go all in or nothing. Be a passive viewer. Anything you'd like to add before I let him finish?
Well, does it punish you for? It punishes you for being a generalist on the same channel, on the same platform? You can create multiple ones. You have to build up your audience for each one, but it wouldn't punish you for doing that. Like if you do a YouTube or chainsaw videos and like, you know, reading Proust on the other channel, which is obviously two totally different audiences.
Yeah, but you certainly could do it. Yeah.
Right. Like it doesn't punish you for doing that, but you have to build each one like a separate business. You can't be like, come into my restaurant and here's the menu of offerings. It's like, no, we serve burgers and fuck everything else, maybe fries, right?
Yeah.
So and as far as I understand it, there's another clip where another YouTuber who's a metal YouTuber explains this video, response to this video. We don't have to watch that, but he says the YouTube algorithms have changed, that you used to be able to do a little more like, hey, here's some music, here's some film, here's some baking, whatever.
Yes.
Come rock with me.
Yeah, absolutely. The YouTube algorithm has changed in recent years, and over time. And I think part of it is in reaction to TikTok, where being extremely narrow, like even like being the person who just sits there and eats soup, or being Dave Portnoy going on One Bite Pizza reviews, which I love. I love One Bite Pizza reviews. You are awarded or rewarded for just doing that one thing over and over and over again. And I can see how that can burn a person out. But I can also see how it can make it very easy to fake.
Well, to show up and not be, it's almost like being a sex worker at this point, right? Like when you get to the point where he clearly lost his drive, like, you know, just rewinding for a second, what do you think of the tone of this compared to, like, what is your impression of the more recent clip after watching this one?
I see a guy, well, to get personal, I see what a lot of people see in newsrooms, where, especially in local news, but it's not just local news, where you do essentially the same story over and over again, where you're going to a variation on the same crime scene. You're going to the variation of the same nonprofits doing the same nonprofit things. You're going to the same press conferences with the same, you know, remix of the same politician saying the same exact thing. And if you look through your stories over time, you're seeing the same stuff. And you get frustrated and you get disinterested. That's what I see in his description at the moment.
Okay, so now watching this second clip, how convinced are you that he was like, I was never interested in music? Like,
Well, I'm actually more.
You're more convinced.
Yeah, because look, I you know, I think YouTube and being in and TikTok and Instagram and social media can be a profession. And I think and your profession can overlap with your passion. But to assume that it did, or that you could not sort of, you know, do a deep Google dive and add a little improv and fake it is, I think you're giving a guy like that a little too much credit.
No, let me respond, because he wasn't faking it. When he was talking about scenes that he wasn't super familiar with, he did what any reporter would do. He did what I do all the time, because from my personal experience, I like.
I'm not saying he wasn't a music fan at all.
Well, that's what he's saying in the most recent clip, though.
He was probably
interested in music. I only looked on Wikipedia. I only did it for the money. He's presenting as if he actually does not like music. That's the way people are responding to. That's what people are responding to, saying, oh my God. He is putting that out there, I think, on purpose to create the impression that I invaded this music lane and just cynically made money off of you stupid, gullible idiots.
I think it's a little bit of both.
As a way of backing out with a bang to leave people like, oh my God, like you know, butthurt, basically.
You're giving the guy way too much credit.
No, but let me. So as somebody, I like covering music that I had no background in.
Mm-hmm.
I write from the perspective, I don't fake it, but I like for what I write to work for people who are totally aficionados of that style and for people that know nothing about it. But whenever an editor would ask me, they would throw me like, hey, do you want to cover this? I'd be like, I know nothing about that. I'll take it. I love doing that. His videos are not misleading in any way whatsoever. There's nothing there that is like an act. The thing that he's talking about is actually having his interest limited to saying the same thing over and over. The first few times he said it, though, I don't think there was lack of passion there at all. What I hear in him and so many other people, maybe not so many, but I've heard other YouTubers talk about this, is that you start doing something, like you said, for passion. Then it becomes a job, but then you're also limited in this one superficial thing. It's like what Tyler the Creator said. He's like, man, people still come up to me and they talk about this jokey video that I did. He actually had a very similar issue. And he's like, now I don't joke with people anymore. He's like, I just did something with a symphony and people are still talking about my joke videos.
Sure.
Right. So even he is feeling that. I think major artists feel this all the time. They're like, man, I made that song in 1975 and I just made a new record.
Van Morrison comes to mind immediately. Van Morrison comes to mind immediately. Like, I don't play those songs no more. No fucking way. You know, it's Tom York not wanting to play guitar. It's, you know, like, it's, you know, it's a very common thing. And I think it goes beyond music, but absolutely. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Go on.
And I think what he was expressing, this like sort of dissonance between where it sat with him to like do another new metal video, right? When he wasn't really feeling it. What I think this causes a schism. This is something you're not as, I don't think you put as much weight in this, but I feel this a lot coming from YouTubers. Anybody that suddenly gets activated by an audience, I think this happened to Jordan Peterson. You end up drifting into this role that you're playing, and I think it's so gradual you don't necessarily notice, and there's a schism internally.
Audience capture.
Yes, but I think it internally causes a schism. And
yeah,
him saying, I was never interested in music, I think it's just him pouring gasoline. He's like, I don't want to be that guy anymore. Fuck this. But the assertion or the implication that he never liked music and was just coming in and taking advantage, that's I don't think that's true at all.
I see that as a guy in an interview being flippant and not careful with his words. Not as like a statement of, you know, I've come down from the mountain with chiseled words in stone kind of statement. I see this as a guy who's in an interview who is frustrated and wants to, he was just simply trying to articulate himself quickly, and just sort of blurted out something.
You know what
reminds? Yeah.
You know what this reminds me of? Two things. I think what he meant was, I'm sick of music. I'm not into music right now. I'm not into music lately. I'm totally like, you put music in front of me, bleh, I don't even want to look at it, is what people get to when they have a glut of something that they're kind of force feeding themselves, right? It reminds me of a recent clip I watched of Trent Richardson, who got traded to the Colts. And so when that happened, I lost my love of football right there. And he kept going. He kept playing for like, I think 2 years after. And he said, I just could not, my love of football was gone. I could not stand football. I didn't want to watch it. I didn't want to. Now that's a slightly different thing. He got traded. He wanted to stay on the team he was on. I think it was the Browns. There's that. It also reminds me of when my daughter was a certain age, maybe like 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4, and now her baby brother who's 3. When they're not in the mood for something at that age, they just say, I don't like it. It's like, well, you ate this like 5 times last week. But when they're not in the mood, they just feel like, no, I don't like that. What they really mean is, I don't want that right now.
Yeah, and I think that's common. Obviously, it goes beyond a child. I think we all do that to a certain degree. When we've, had, I think we, like, weird. It's weird to bring him into this, but Donald Trump is a walking version of this, where the guy will say something. Only I think he's a bit more conscious of it, because he will say something that's like totally over the top. I think of, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, And it's big. It's broad. It's a big, broad statement. It's one, and the reason why I think he uses it is because it's in marketing. It's a big. It's a thing that will stick. And the guy's a master marketer.
You're talking about Trump now.
I'm talking about both these guys.
Okay. Okay.
But I don't think this Finn necessarily, from what I see in those two clips, I don't think that Finn necessarily meant to do that, but I think that's what he did. I do think Finn is a master marketer in that he found a niche, he built a thing, and he's built so much of a fan base. It's so much of a foothold within that niche that he was able to get a reaction just from saying a brief line on a show. So that's a sign of master marketing in a different way, clearly.
Well, and Jesse Lee put that in the trailer for the clip, knowing that's going to, set off a bomb. And
Jesse is in that club too.
As what?
Jesse's in that club too. He's he's a really good marketer.
Well, you and I would have done the exact same thing to the thing is, he had in the beginning a clear perspective on the way music scenes would rise and fall and where they would reach a certain point in the culture, from being underground to being a little less fringe to being mainstream to being passé, that reflected a view on music that somebody who just walked in and started looking on Wiki doesn't give you that context. He had an individual outlook, and I think that's what people were interested in. And as he moved away from the things he was interested in to cover these other scenes, he's like, oh, I'm sort of doing the same thing. But then when people punished him because he said you get more negative comments, less views and more negative comments. And I think he's somebody, I'm speculating here, but I get the impression he's somebody who's sensitive to the negative comments. He does that thing where he reads the comments on his channel. And yes, he's marketing, but it seems like, well, you're kind of taking this personally. I think he felt confined by his own success and resentful towards the audience. And now he's basically like, fuck y'all, I'm not even doing YouTube anymore. I'm going to go do my marketing thing later for this shit. And is like looking at it like, that stuff was gross anyway. I was never interested in it anyway. I think that's where he's at. I think give him a year, I'd be curious to see where he's at with just music as a listener and a fan and somebody who looks at these kind of trends a couple years from now. I think he overused the muscle and he lost his taste for something like the same flavor of thing over and over. And you probably get sick of hearing your own voice from the same angle. I mean, I know I do, and I haven't even done barely any videos. I'm like, wow, there I am saying the same fucking thing again. That's why you need other people, I think, a lot of times. Like, I think the people that have the most fun on YouTube and stay with it have a lot of interaction with co-hosts, or, they'll go on somebody else's podcast. They have multiple things where there's engagement with somebody else on camera.
I agree with that last statement, but I want to back up and ask a more macro question, because I think it's one of the things that we have disagreed on, like, throughout the years.
From the beginning, probably.
I have, and those who are listening, watching, I've long believed that in media, people are often playing a character. That character is usually based on them. In fact, in my training as a journalist and as a broadcaster, one of the common axioms, and it was used with me, was yourself plus 10% more.
Right. You've described it as turning up the volume on certain things that are actually you, but turning up that's what you're.
Yeah. And that's what I see here. I think we saw a bit in that reaction, it looked like a Twitch stream. That he was sort of, he turned down the volume a bit, and it was getting a little bit back to him. And what you saw with his thoughtful deep dives, like one of the ones I watched was on Sugar Ray, and he went pretty deep. He went pretty deep back in their history, talking about how where they came from, the type of music they did, and how even like songs like Fly aren't that different from the ones that they created back when they were underground band with a different name. I think it was Shrinky Dinks or something like that.
I don't know, but yes.
yeah. And it was fascinating and interesting, and he added this sort of marketing perspective, and it's clear he did more than Wikipedia research. But to me, it was clear he did research. That he may have gone on message boards. He may have gone deep into the Sugar Ray, the equivalent of, like I used to be on the green plastic Radiohead blog boards. Like, and you could find people, you could see these discussions and find all this stuff. And obviously Mark McGrath's talked about it and all this stuff. So you could do that research.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can easily turn up. So, this is how I felt when I heard this, and you could turn up different knobs to give the appearance of, really giving a fuck about this group in this circumstance, and you can look at it from a marketing MBA perspective.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that Sugar Ray, I haven't seen that Sugar Ray video, but I've seen others of his like this. I don't think there was anything misleading or even exaggerated. Maybe some of the humor, but
I'm not thinking it's misleading. I'm not saying it's misleading.
But you're saying he did research. I'm answering this idea that he did research as if he's presenting that he really was invested in Sugar Ray. That I never got that impression. I think what he was into was the dynamics. This, I think, is totally authentic of what happens when a band goes from fringe and like an exclusive little cluster of people like, no, this is our shit, to where Sugar Ray went, or somebody. I think a better example, like the like quintessential arc that he would talk about is something like a Green Day or the scene around them, right? I think that is 100% real. He, to me, came off sometimes as a reporter. Here, I'm reporting from the scene of Sugar Ray's career and where they are now. I don't necessarily get when I watch News 10 that somebody's super into football when they go to the Highmark Stadium to talk about the Bills. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, I'm just here talking about the fans. So I don't know what was turned up there. That's what
I do, but I never said invested. Like but I do think I agree with you, and I got from taking in his stuff that he's definitely invested in the arc, the broader idea where you go from nothing to something, and then what happens after you become something, and and that's a fantastic arc. That's is classic, both in terms of news and in terms of storytelling, just broadly. And when you graft this onto a niche, it's really interesting, and it could be you could create a lot of great content just within those confines. And then YouTube and TikTok, they force you to narrow it a little bit further. So
to keep the chainsaw running. That's what they.
Well, yeah. I mean, one great example. Have you heard of? My girlfriend is into this tasting history channel.
No, sounds interesting.
It's this guy who goes and finds old recipes and then tries to remake those recipes, like he did cornflakes, the original recipe of cornflakes, and then he tells the history of cornflakes. So he'll go and just find these things like this throughout history Like you make dog food from, back in the day. What was that like? So yeah, like there's a clear arc to everything he does, and he has to stay within those arc. I think what I think where we've constantly disagreed on was someone committing to their bit, throwing themselves into their bit. You often, I think, confuse that with passion. And I think it's some passion with a lot of spice.
And what do you think my counter to that? I think you could script my counter to that would be you. What do you imagine that I would say that you're doing? Because I think you know exactly what it is.
That essentially I'm being Spock.
Close. Yes. That's not the first thing, but yeah, that I think I would say that what's happening is the reward of validation from an audience and activating the interest of an audience immediately and then gradually over time will start to shape your instincts for what you're going after in a way that I don't think is as calculated as you often make it out. Yes, I know some people are calculating about this, but I think even when they are,
I think everybody.
Right, I would very much disagree with that. And you're saying, oh, well, why would we do this if we didn't want people? I don't think it's that cut and dry. And I think that the role that you start to play, because I do agree people start to play a role. I think you and I disagree on the why and how it is that someone gets there. What I think happens is the role slips into the self, and people often find themselves confused as the role starts to take over who they are.
I actually agree with you.
All right, then.
Yeah, but I also think I think that it's a little bit of both. I think Stephen A. Smith's a great example. Even you go back to Fox Sports 1, Stephen A. Smith. It's the old Stephen A. Smith radio show. And even quite frankly, first ESPN Golden Age Stephen A. Smith. Even early First Take Stephen A. Smith, the seeds were there. This is part of him. But he is conscious. It's a mix of subconsciously, that, hey, this is making me money, this is making me popular, this is so I'm leaning, so I'm just sort of absorbing what the audience wants, what my bosses want, as he has said.
What pays the bills and what creates a sizzle.
Yes. He's sort of embodying that, and subconsciously, and he's sort of when you play a role enough, and I as a broadcaster, you often do this, because when you run into broadcasters, you often find them just slipping in and out of broadcasting voice.
On the job or off the job?
Conversation. At home.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yes. When they're not on. Yeah.
When you're just out and about, you hear broadcasters who have this sort of, it's their ramped up self, and they're just slipping into it. They it morphs, it becomes a part of you. And it's hard to disentangle it. And I think, yes, there is this sort of purposeful, like, adaptation. I certainly went through it to be on air. And then at the same time, there's this sort of like, this is, people like this. So and on somewhere in the back of your head, you sort of slip in and out. And I think that's what is happening with these public figures. That we can't turn it off. Skip Bayless can't stop being Skip Bayless because it's Skip Bayless isn't he's not playing Forrest Gump, right? Like he can't just leave Forrest Gump and be Tom Hanks. Skip Bayless is playing Skip Bayless. So he can't be something separate. So I think in this digital world, whether it's Jesse Lee or it's Finn McKenty or you or me or Stephen A, Mina Kimes even, that we are bouncing back and forth from, purposefully pumping ourselves up, and then we can't leave it behind because we are surrounded by media. And we're constantly on stage. And that's not even getting to the audience yet. It's constantly having that phone in the pocket. It's being able to go live stream on a Saturday morning with just because we want to. And then you have the audience.
Or even just take a selfie with your kid or your partner, or that's a performance too.
It's the kind of thing that didn't happen in other eras because you had to make an effort to get on stage. Now you don't really have to.
Sure. It's like the Panopticon has really, I don't want to say pushed us into a corner because we walked into it willingly, but maybe weren't, well, not maybe. I think that a lot of these successful online creators are, or people like Jordan Peterson who were driven by an online reaction, like their fame was catapulted by that. I think they're finding that there's some sort of like existential crisis that happens. I think like you don't realize what you're getting into until it happens.
Sure.
Right. So they're setting out, where I would agree with you is a lot of these people are setting out to say, well, I want a big following. I want this. But then when you get there, it creates this like psychic break that you have to find a way to navigate, or you're in trouble. Like I mean, Kanye West was probably what we might sort of like generically refer to as mentally ill or bipolar or something before he was famous. I don't know that those labels should apply to him, but just sort of as a shorthand, right? He was a little tweaked or a little tripped of a guy before that. Probably would have been walking around saying similar things as he does now, just if he was the guy down the block from you that you saw every now and again. But I absolutely do not think that having that huge of a feedback system from that many people, it did not do him any favors, and it put him in this kind of feedback loop where now the tail is wagging the dog. The tail being the persona is wagging the dog of who, and I think it's very hard to keep who you are intact throughout that process. I think it happens over and over and over. And I think I'm trying to identify where it is that you and I actually disagree, because it sounds like we're overlapping quite a bit. Where you and I think, agree the most is on the intent, the conscious calculation. Stephen A. Smith, by the way, to me seems totally calculated, and it's totally playing a role. I think for content creators, it's blurrier, and I think they slip into this semi-consciously.
I think Stephen A. is sort of both. Only his role is more of a he comes from an older school aesthetic. Remember, this is a guy who was, if you believe, he was a newspaper columnist and writer, and you believe Jason Whitlock, he was a bad one. I don't ever remember Stephen A. Smith.
As a columnist.
You know, as a columnist or a writer, maybe I missed it, but by the time I encountered him, he was a personality. In the early 2000s, and much like a lot of his peers, he was sort of on the grind, sort of trying to become the guy. And that's different because the barrier for entry is different now.
There is none.
Yeah.
It's clear.
Yeah. This guy Finn McKenty can decide that I'm going to create a channel that I want to, that I'm going to use my background to sort of infuse this channel with all this, with uniqueness, a uniqueness that I don't see in the marketplace. And I'm going to use these to create this whole sector for myself. And what I believe is that a guy like this, and I do think someone who creates a thing called Punk Rock MBA, I think that guy's calculated. And I think that in this era, and I mean going back close to, I'd say he's easily 10 years, probably longer. I think the people who have entered this, for the most part, aren't entering this accidentally. Now, I could be wrong about him, but in macro, most people who set out that, hey, I'm going to make a shit ton of YouTube videos displaying my expertise on X subject, they're doing it because they want it to be seen by a lot of people. They're doing it because they have seen other people do it, and they're like, oh, why not me? It's not because I'm a fan and I want to share what I know. There are people like that, but I think they're the exception, not the rule. And you think they're the rule, you think they're the rule, not the exception.
I think that the thing you mentioned, I've got a unique perspective, and I'm paraphrasing you, but speaking from Finn's point of view, how you summed it up, is I've got a unique perspective. I want to parlay that into something that can work for me.
Yes.
Not only in generating an audience, but also in reaping the rewards, particularly financial rewards of generating said audience. But to use your idea, like what I would throw back at you is your own idea. The thing that's unique is the you part, is you are the thing that's unique.
Sure.
And I go back to our stream from maybe 3 weeks ago, like 2 streams ago, where you asked me to go ISO and talk about Chuck Klosterman. There's nothing about that is not, like, I was not turning anything up. That's actually, if any human being asked me about Chuck Klosterman, that's the gear I would get to just on my own. I'd get into a fucking foaming at the mouth. But here's the thing. Here's what happens though. Like I would have to stop myself from getting there because I get, all crazed about it. Here's the thing. If I do a video like that and it gets 10 or 500,000 views, what's going to happen if I keep trying to remanufacture to turn it up to that degree, which is the same thing that afflicts bands that have to play the same songs 80 times in a year or more, right? It afflicts athletes who have to try to find a way to generate the drive to win, right? Or at least act like they are. So I don't think that people first walking into YouTube, I think I agree with you that some people are like, let me contrive an angle on this. But I feel like I agree with you that I think it's the majority, or I agree with your diagnosis that, like, my thing is, I think the majority think, oh, if I just show up, I can offer something that will be rewarded to begin with. I mean, how is that turning up any different than when you're at a party and you crack jokes because you're on, right? Like, what is the difference?
I agree. And here's what I disagree with you. I've sat down, I've had dinner with you a zillion times. We've had beers.
Mhm.
We had coffee. We had smoothies.
Mhm.
You were turning it up with Klosterman.
When we were on camera, you're saying?
Yeah.
I would say
Yes. Yes.
no.
Absolutely.
That's you cannot have a camera. You cannot have a camera.
Out.
What?
What are you talking about? Of course you were turning it up.
Maybe you are Spock. It's a subject I feel so strongly about that I will get there no matter who's listening. I get there when I'm writing on my own.
I know you get I don't think you get to that.
Yes, I do. I absolutely get to that. I mean, there's a point where I can present that same thing self-aware that I know people are laughing at it and that I know how ridiculous it sounds, but that's not playing a role. That's actually
It is playing a role.
It's being aware of how this aspect of me, which is 100% me, you don't need to add salt or hot oil to have that arise from me. What I'm doing on camera now by not doing that is more of a role than that. Like I have to restrain that from being the dominant gear that I'm in. If we're talking about a subject that gets me going, like Klosterman, I will get there. Like I might bite my tongue because I'm like, well, James doesn't need to hear this for the 500th time. Because I know, like, people who know me, it's like, okay, there he goes again, like, going on and on and on about this thing, like it's like, of such grand importance. And it's like, well, I can sense, okay, someone else is most likely not going to care as much about that topic as I am, and it's not going to be life or death to them as it would be to me. But if I get into a lather, that's almost involuntary.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
But, and this is a guy who's known you almost 2 decades.
Sure. And I mean, you could be right. I'm not going to, but even if I think you're not right, which in this case I don't have to convince, I don't feel the need to, I know this is how you see things, but what was on camera, what our audience saw, or whoever was watching saw, that is me, 100,000%. Where I will agree with you is, like I said, if I have a video like that suddenly catches fire, all of a sudden your entire system goes, oh, let's do more of that, and right away you're off and running down the track of playing a role.
But my argument is not that it's not you. My argument is that it's an exaggeration of you. It's not.
That is not exaggerated whatsoever. I'm not saying I don't exaggerate or I'm incapable of it. I'm saying what you saw is not exaggerated for effect because I was talking to on camera. I could be talking to anyone. Hold on a second. I literally could be walking down the street talking to myself, and I will get to that place.
Oh, I agree.
So there's no audience there. There's no audience there. And I do talk to myself walking down the street, by the way, just so people know. I can get all. My daughter's mom said she had seen me do that once. She said, if I didn't know you, I would have gone to the other side of the street thinking you were some raving schizophrenic person. Not to make fun of people with schizophrenia, but she said, I would have thought you were like a street person who was mentally ill, like gesticulating in the air. By the way, what I love about going to New York City is nobody gives a fuck. I can do that walking down the street. So that's not for their benefit. When I'm back in the Bronx and I'm walking, boy, that's not for anybody watching. That's totally nobody's watching that or reacting.
I think, and this is what I saw in our first conversation, the fabled conversation we had years and years ago, is that you're where I said, I basically predicted this.
Yes, you sure did. My life
within minutes. Because I think you are the type of personality who, whether you've however it happened, where you slip in and out of that sort of high, you are essentially Stephen A, where it's kind of the sort of effigy, the giant version of you. Go back to our last stream to go in that deeper. You slip into that this sort of giant figure, less defined, but like bigger version of you, and then back and out. You do that within conversation all the time.
Yeah. I'd say it's a louder figure, not necessarily a louder and more manic gear. But the fascinating and hilarious thing about that is that you said that when I was barely speaking. Because I remember that conversation. All I was doing was asking Andy questions. He was telling me about their trip to Venezuela with doing like indie media documenting and talking about Hugo Chavez and that, because I remember thinking, like, how does this motherfucker like know? Because it totally wasn't a lie. And again, for anybody who hasn't heard the story, James and I have a mutual friend. I think they introduced us. Well, this is where we met. Yeah. And I think we were at their house.
It was a party. No, I don't think it was at their house. Was it?
They had just come back from Venezuela. Andy and his then spouse. They were documenting their far left leaning activist friends of ours. Yeah. And I'd been introduced to James by our guy Rajesh, who, by the way, is let me use his camera. So shout out to Rajesh. And James and I were introduced, and then maybe 20 minutes later, James is in another room of this party, and I am listening to Andy talk about his trip, and he's like, and I'm just quietly asking questions. I'm not like hamming it up, or I'm not on, right? I'm not like lit up because I'm getting attention. And Andy says, and the thing is, Hugo Chavez, he'll get on his state-run like TV network that he runs, and he'll do press conferences that last for like 12 hours, and he'll take the first sentence of someone's question and go on about that first sentence for like half an hour straight. And so I say to Andy, apparently loud enough for James to hear in the other room, I said, man, 12 hours, that's a long time, even for me. And then I hear this voice from this guy I just met who goes, you could totally do it. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how the fuck? And I was thinking, like, well, I don't know if I can do that much. And you were like, dude, you could totally yap for that long. But I'm like, how the fuck does he know? You know what I'm saying?
The conversation that we had initially.
What's that?
It's based on the conversation that we had initially.
I mean, from what I remember, we were like basically introduced, and that was it. And then you went to another room, and I went to
No, we talked for a little. We talked for longer than that.
Okay. So there was some basis, because I was sincerely saying I don't think I could talk for 12. The subtext was that I didn't say out loud to Andy was, man, I know I'm a yapper, but I don't know if I can do 12 fucking hours. Mm-hmm. Like speak for that long straight just on camera. And James like, yeah, you could do it.
Well, I've seen you do like 6.
Is it 6
on mic? I think we've done like 6 on microphone.
Yeah, but we're interacting. That's not me monologuing. I can do like 2.5. I'll admit that.
2.5 a lot.
Yeah, I
can. 2.5 a lot, even for like a radio host. Most radio hosts don't do 2.5.
I mean, I'm not saying it's coherent or clean, but I can talk for that long if once I'm going. But again, the thing with Klosterman, here's why this is not, as you say, turned up or exaggerated. Because I've been in rooms with people where they clearly get uncomfortable, like, okay, lighten up there, Francis, right? Kind of a vibe where it's like, I'm not as interested in this as you. I'm not as fucking, like salivating over this as you. Can you tone this down to fit into the situation we're in, because you're like way up here. So certain subjects get me riled up. Now, again, what happens? So someone like me would be in danger of eventually becoming someone like Finn if I start getting rewarded and people are like, oh, yeah, give us more of that. Give us more of that. No, we want you to be that thing. That's where I think I would get into a lot of trouble, or could get into a lot of trouble.
Explain further. So what would be the trouble?
Well, number one, Stephen A can do it for hours and hours and hours and years and years and years. And I don't know what his private life is like, but not need some sort of sedative or something. If I were to stay in that frantic, semi-manic state, I would have serious crashes, and it would be physically damaging. It would, hurt to do that for so long. And to try to turn it on and like jumpstart the engine, like booster cable that into being, I think would be very unhealthy for me. And also, I say things to you and to my friends, but particularly to you, that are very pointed. Whereas I guess what I would say is my turned up version is the more diplomatic side of me, where I want to be more less incendiary about the things I say. It doesn't work very well, and the incendiary aspect finds a way to come forward. But with you, part of this whole thing is that I'm more unbuttoned, and I will say things to you on camera that I would be very averse to saying, or very careful about saying in other settings, and just, like just letting it fly. You know what I mean? So I guess the turned up aspect is the more muted, reserved presentation. So there you go. Maybe you're right.
And I'll take credit for that. Not just with you, but with other people.
Well, but you have it flipped though. But you have it flipped though. You're saying the loud thing.
Yeah.
I think if I were just being 100% natural,
yeah,
either in talking on camera or talking to any person, whether it's not on camera or any kind of podcast type of situation, media type situation, the would surface multiple times throughout the conversation, but that would happen 100% organically, no matter what the situation is. My exaggeration is actually in the diplomacy, which is also real too, but it's in trying to rein that in that I'm a little more exaggerated. Because if I'm just talking one-on-one with somebody, I will let the horse go wild much more so than I think is safe to do on camera. But it comes forward anyway. I'll set out to do videos. I'm like, no, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything pointed, and just I don't want to fucking be Joe Budden up here. You know what I mean? Like hysterical.
Shout out to Joe Budden.
Joe Budden. I don't really. I get, but I guess I have a morbid curiosity. I guess I'm sort of a fan. I guess I'm a fan of Joe Budden the same way I would be of 500-pound people oil wrestling or something. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't take my eyes off it, but it's kind of gross. But I think that here's why I think it's unsafe. People get hate no matter what they say in public online. Even if you're the most reserved, polite, people are going to hate you for doing that. People say mean things. Okay. But when you put fire, if you have a fiery mode of expression and you put that out there, you cannot match the fire that then comes back at you. You just can't. So I don't want to show up with all the flamethrower. Like Brunswick's nickname for me is gas can and blue tips. That's what he says. That's the way I talk. That's the way I express myself. Like, oh my God, you say such extreme incendiary things. But I think doing that in a public, outward facing way is just hazardous. It'll get you a lot of attention. It'll get you a brand, but what will it do to you?
It's interesting where you landed there, because, I mean, isn't that essentially what happened to Finn?
Yeah. And who else can we
And
think of?
I mean, so many other, like, I think personalities on other platforms as well, both old school and new school. I do think people get tired of, of doing the same old thing. I think of one of my favorites is Dylan Radigan. I don't know if
I
you're
don't know
familiar
who
with it.
that is. Nope.
He was one of the he was a cable news personality. He was on CNBC, and he got tired of financial news. He didn't think it was like making a difference in the world.
Mm.
So he was like, all right, I'm going to switch to news. I'm going to do just straight news. So he ended up on re-signing with NBC, but except this time he went to MSNBC, and he did this. Honestly, I think the finest hour that network's produced.
Mm.
And one of my favorite, and I still lean on this, is get the money out. Get the money out of politics was his rallying cry.
Mm.
Because we need to get the money out of politics. I wholeheartedly, fully, with every fiber of my being, believe that we need to get the money out of politics. And this was a guy who day after day on TV would come on and say, get the money out of politics. The root of all evil in politics is money. And he did that for years. And it was a rating success. And they wanted him back. But he realized that he really wasn't making a difference in the world. He was just on cable TV yammering.
For a network, by the way, that had no interest in people getting the money out of politics. They platformed him saying that, but they don't, it's like going into McDonald's and saying, let's get, health food into your kids.
Well, what network does? None of them do. None of them really care about getting the money out of politics. No, it's never been central to. I can't think of a network where it's been central to. And that includes things like Democracy Now. Even like it's not a central tenet to what they do. Like it's definitely not I think a war room with Steve Bannon. It's not a central tenet to what they do. It's more about playing the game and getting the person that you want in control. That's what it's about. That's really, what all these outlets are.
It's really keep the money in politics so we can complain about the money in politics, and so that we can keep going doing that.
Yeah. So what he did was he took his piles of money and started to invest in solutions around the world, hydroponics, and trying to he's really worried about the environment, really worried about sort of like, hey, I want to do something that makes a tangible difference on the planet. So he went and shifted out into this world. And he hasn't really he did a little bit of podcasting, but even then he sort of just didn't dive in completely. And instead he just went out and did something different, did something completely disconnected. And I could see a guy like Finn making that decision, using his expertise to make money, yes. But like just thinking, hey, like, do I have to do this myself? That's the kind of decision that I think he made. Much like Radigan, I think Finn, he had passion. He was passionate about saying, get the money out of politics. And yes, we need to reshore and rebuild American manufacturing and all this stuff. But sometimes you just get tired of yourself saying it.
I think inevitably get tired of hearing yourself talk if you're on the same gear all the time, unless you're, I mean, I even wonder for like raging narcissists, if they were stuck in one topic, could even that person manage to listen to themselves over and
Probably.
over? I mean,
They're
would it
raging
match their sense of, yeah, but would it match their sense of grandiosity? Because narcissists are going to talk about a lot of, like, I mean, setting them aside, I think inevitably you will get tired of hearing yourself say the same thing, like looking at yourself as like this circus monkey, organ grinder kind of character. And it shows. I mean, it showed in that clip of his saying, yeah, you're right. I don't think my videos are especially original, or my recent ones, you know? So I guess he's a cautionary tale.
Have I I haven't looked, but maybe you have. Has he talked to anyone since publicly?
I didn't watch it, but I saw that there's another clip. Finn answers. Who is it from? The YouTuber's name escapes me, but Finn responds. I don't know if he has. My guess is not yet,
Okay.
and certainly not to the
What would
same
you-
degree.
What would you say if you were in the shoes?
In response to
The accusations, to the reaction, what would you say?
well, I'll answer that. But what's interesting is I thought he was contriving. Speaking about turning it up, I thought he was contriving going out like a villain. I thought that this is his version of destroying the character he felt he'd become by turning into like a supervillain kind of, and having people be mad at him. Oh, if you're gonna be mad at me, fine. I'll be a villain. I'd never cared about music at all. What would I say? It's hard for me to imagine being in that position. And I keep thinking back to things he said in the past. I feel like you could do a couple things. You could double down and say, hey, you're just all in your feelings because I got the better of you, get a life or something. You could do that, which I imagine he might say something like that. Or you could be like, look, I had a moment and this is what I'm talking about. I'm a person and you keep wanting me to be this thing that you want. I'm going to go be a person now. Focus on other things, I guess. But I'm having a hard time imagining being in that position.
So you couldn't conceive of a project that you threw yourself into where you were front and center that is not wholly you?
My knee-jerk reaction was to say no, but then we consider job postings and things all the time that are like, you're willing to make a deal, sort of dance with the devil at least for a while, thinking that you'll stay intact. And we stay at jobs long after. I mean, we do what Finn did.
Exactly.
The only difference is this is in front of people. So people have had the same experience that he's having at their jobs for time immemorial. As long as there have been jobs, people have been like, well, this is really, and I stayed in this 15 years longer than I really, really wanted to do, and you're turning it up or turning it down or playing a role to satisfy what your employers need you to be and want and are compensating you, right, to be. So could I conceive of that? Yes, I could totally conceive of it. I'm having a hard time putting myself in his shoes because I don't know what it's like to have that many people responding for better or for ill to my communication. I just don't know.
I've been closer,
Hmm.
but not quite to this degree. If I guess it would depend on what my end goal is. If my end goal is essentially to go teach this and make a bunch more money just on this in a different lane, then I would say, hey, look, I YouTube, social media is a system. I followed the rules of a system in order to win. But now I'm going to move on and teach people how to win. If he is what you think he is, in that a guy who just sort of burned out, then I think you come at it a different perspective where it's like, look, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of this. Yeah, I said that, but it kind of just flew out of my mouth. I'm taking a break. And we've all gone through this where we've done something to death and it's time to move on. And I want to take some time. And I'll see you on the next video, whenever it comes. Something like that. But it depends for me on what the next step is.
It also depends on what his goal is. I mean, if his goal is to show marketing, didn't he just create a viral moment by doing this?
Yeah, he did. He did. Yeah.
So, and he got an interviewer. He agreed to have that interviewer highlight and lead with the most controversial point to create a buzz. I mean, I don't know how much Jesse Lee did that on his own, but I mean, Finn McKenty's aware that he was going to do that. And I wonder whether they didn't cook that up between themselves. And he could say, as a marketer, yeah, I did this. The question I have is, right, it depends on his intentions. And the question I have is, like, I remember he posted a video of him and his then girlfriend, now wife, on vacation and saying, it's been a great year. I'm so thankful. You could say, oh, YouTubers, you want to market yourself as having a human and seeming like relatable to fans. But he said a lot of stuff like that. Like, why would you go on and say that you think you're on the autism spectrum? There's no marketing.
Unless he was just angry and kind of like, just popping off. You know what I mean?
No. What I meant was the pictures on the vacation. Here's my it's so great to be a dad. Oh, by the way, I think I've always had this suspicion I'm on the autism spectrum. Those moves in the past didn't. I'm trying to think of what the cynical application for saying those things and being disclosing. So it depends on his.
I don't think every movie he's making is cynical. I think he's a human making a bunch of moves, and some are cynical and some are not. Perhaps he just was sort of blabbing.
You mean in those times, or the time where he said he doesn't like music?
In the times where he mentions the autism spectrum, he's just sort of blabbing. In the not liking music, that's more cynical. And I think you can, in the words of Smitty from JP and Smitty, two things can be true.
Mm.
By the way, I gotta get that soundbite. Two things can be true.
Well, while you cue that up, here's what I would ask. You asked me what I would say, how I would respond. Here's what I would ask. You're saying you're going to tell me that you watch my videos and you subscribe to my stuff. You're going to tell me that you didn't have a good time watching them? That's what he could say. He could turn around and say, like, it's like, well, you engaged with the content. The retort to that would be, well, we thought you were sincere, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, the content is the content. You had the response to it, you did. How does that really change? And what do I owe you anyway?
He doesn't. He doesn't at all, which is part of why I find this reaction interesting. Like there's sort of this, like you owe us. You said this was. You never said what this was, and I don't get the sense. Obviously I didn't watch every video he did, but this is just a guy putting out content, and there's a lot of presumptions when you put out content that that the viewers and listeners have, whether you say it or not. They're presuming things in the conversation. We talked about that.
They're presuming you're in a relationship. It's like, we're not in a relationship. Well, I mean,
yes, yeah, but they are presuming. They are going to presume it though. It's part of being a public figure,
right? You're in a relationship.
You're in a relationship. You are in a relationship with your audience.
Yes, but what I meant was relationship with a capital R. It's like, dude, I'm not your people. I'm not your spouse. I'm not your, you know what I mean? Like, yes, we are in a relationship with our audiences, and I like the whole parasocial thing. I think that's one of the great benefits to come from this time period that we're in, and the media landscape being what it is now. I love the engagement with not only the people themselves who operate the channel, but their audience. I love talking to other people who are fans of the same stuff. But it's like, I'm not your boyfriend kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not your wife kind of a thing. It's like, what more did you expect? Watching his videos from the lens of this disclosure, if I believed him, I guess I would think, oh my God, that's gross. It's almost like being lied to for sex or something, and somebody turns around and feels like, whoa, well, you used me. And then they say, well, you knew what you were getting into. It's like, well, no, I didn't. Or you made the choice to do this. It's like, well, I didn't know what I was getting into. I just happened not to buy it. But if I were him, depending on a certain angle, I'd be like, well, you enjoyed those videos. What is different now? Is it the sense that I played you?
I think that's the sense that I got from gauging some of the reaction, that it said that like you said that it was this and it wasn't that. Therefore, I believed you. Therefore, I am hurt.
Mm.
And that was, which is, it speaks to that parasocial relationship thing you were talking about, in that I just go back to some of the things I would get in email from USA Today, where there would be people who, like I mentioned my mom in one of my intros at one point. And here we were, like 6 months later, I got this email from this dude who was like, hey, how's your mom? Like it was this sort of, like, they had this sort of like, hey, you hadn't mentioned your mom in a while. I want to know how she's doing. So like, you can't control whether it's a capital R or a lowercase r relationship that your audience has with you. You kind of just have to roll with it.
This reminds me of a clip that I looked up last night, actually, for my latest Substack piece that I'm working on, that I'm looking to close the year out on. I'm very excited about. But there's a clip from The King of Comedy, the Martin Scorsese film, with Robert De Niro, Jerry Lewis, and Sandra Bernhardt. And Jerry Lewis is playing kind of like a version of himself in like a darker alternate black comedy universe, where he's a Johnny Carson type figure. late night talk show host. And have you seen The King of Comedy?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in like 40 years. I was a kid when I watched it with my mom on like VHS. But there's a part where Jerry Lewis, who also plays a guy named Jerry in the movie, he's walking down the street and this fan comes up to him and says, "Oh, Jerry, I love your work so much. You're so inspiring." And then he's on a corner in Manhattan and he's about to cross the street. And she goes, "Could you just come over and say a few words?" She goes to a payphone and say a few words to my nephew. He loves you so much. And he's like, "I really, really have to get going." And then her tone changes and she's like, "You deserve to die of cancer." And she's holding the phone. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
So something like that supposedly really happened to Jerry Lewis. Like that's based on an encounter he had. And there's also in the movie Quiz Show, there's a very similar interaction where the Ralph Fiennes character is famous now because he's on this quiz show, and people on the street, and this is like in the 50s, so they didn't have a very sophisticated understanding of what they're demanding of famous people. And people are angry. "You snob, they want a part of that, of touching and being in the presence of someone who has the glow of being on television. What's fascinating to me, though, James, is the barrier to entry is now 0, but yet people still feel this buzz when they connect with you if you have some sort of action online. It's not the same as being on TV, but there's still that has persisted in some degree, and I'm surprised it hasn't diminished more. I'm surprised we're not like, "Oh, that's just the guy on YouTube. That's that person can be like me. This is on the same level as me." What is your response to that?
I want to start by quibbling with, disagreeing with one of the things you said there. You said that people back in the 50s didn't have the sophisticated way of looking at public figures that we do now.
What we demand of public figures.
We still don't. It hasn't gotten better.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think more people are aware. We at least have a dialogue for it, but you're right. I think it hasn't improved.
Yeah. I don't think we have a sophisticated look at this at all. Hence why, I was watching Arnold Schwarzenegger, old Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's this clip of him in New York City. He had to be flanked by multiple bodyguards. And, he's not looking like he was. He might not be on the roids anymore, but he, he's looking kind of old and gray and he's being, followed by, whether it's, one of the tabloids. And the video clipped off, but I could easily see somebody trying to run up on Arnold Schwarzenegger and trying to get them to call their nephew, and then flipping out because they didn't take the time to call their nephew. There's all these instances of people in public who are put in similar circumstances, and I think this gets into the sort of NPC in society, the non-player character. I think it's the best meme ever. It says so much about most of our roles that we play, that most of us are not going to make a mark beyond our family and our immediate friends and such. That anyone who gets outside of that is sort of looked at with this rosy glow. It's a little gauzy, a little Vaseline on the lens. You know, like it's you are, even some people who react to me podcasting, who have the full capability of doing it, I think might even be good at it. Some of the reaction to it is like, whoa, you, oh my God, you do what? Like, how? Like, cool. Like, what the hell? Oh my God. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's a certain type of person where it just seems, whether the barrier to entry is large or small, they feel like it's not, that they're not worthy of it. They feel distant from it. And they feel like they are tugging at Superman's cape.
Well,
Because
you said rosy glow. I would go even further and say it's as if you went to the moon and back. For anybody who breaks free of that immediate circle, somehow being a public person, you've touched ground that so few of us will ever be able to. And I think even now, again, what's fascinating to me about this is that this is still persistent in spite of the fact that quote unquote fame is way more accessible. It's still a long shot, but you have a fighter's chance now, whereas before it was like, you know, a 1 in a 10 million chance, right? It's as if you somehow broke free of the Earth's gravity and you're forever altered. You're seen as existing in this other plane. And the thing is with these parasocial relationships, you know, because smaller bands have this, you know, they do meet and greets, they'll do things on Zoom, you know, podcasters do Zooms with their people, their crowd. They are both watering down, they're taking the glow away a little bit, but also exploiting it too at the same time. So you get to do a little bit of both. You're like, oh, come hang with me on Zoom, and I'll be like one of y'all, but we all know the reason is because you still feel this trace glow from being around somebody who touched the moon.
Well, I think it's one of the things that I've considered doing with podcasting. You know, I've subscribed to a few different, podcasts that offer, like Zoom sessions where you can just sit around with a podcaster. You can ask a question. Sometimes you and 100 other fans. It's the relationship is different. It's closer to radio. Social media relationships are more like radio than they are TV or movies. It's intimate,
like a call-in type of, like, hey JB, long time listener, first time caller.
Well, that's one version of it, but even just like even music jocks have this with their audience, where they don't take calls, but like you hear their voice. It's a TV, film, even print. It's less intimate than someone you watch on your phone while you're in the bathroom or listen as you're working and or on the way to work or wherever you're going. They are more a part of your life than TV is. And TV, you're a bit larger. And there is it's a different kind of stardom. Like, but it's both stardom, like all of it, like social media, radio, audio, podcasting, in like TV, movies. These are different shades of the same thing, but it's definitely more intimate on social because audiences are smaller generally. And it's just, I think the size of the screen helps a lot. And the fact that it's in your ear in terms of the audio sense.
Sure, it's like somebody. It's like a quote unquote famous person doing a house call and fixing your kitchen sink as the plumber. That's what it feels like, as opposed to, because like from Finn McKenty to Tom Cruise, they're famous, right? Like it's on a scale, but someone like a Finn McKenty, or certainly a Substacker that does a Substack live and they're reading the comments and answering, it feels more intimate. But I know in those moments where my comment was read by the person reading live, there's something about it that is very intoxicating. Yes, it's dopamine, but it's more than that. It's like one of those coins in Mario Brothers. Like you get the coins like ding, 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 right?
Sure.
There's dopamine and then there's dopamine, right?
Sure.
Just even that. And I'll share with you, I guess I'll confess, I was on a Jason Whitlock live Twitter, and I was about to have my question responded to.
Yeah.
And his hench people were there. So Shamika, who I really, really admire, and then what's the other one's name? The white former football player. Oh my God, I can't.
No.
Yes. Yeah. So they were on there, and
Inch people. Ooh.
What's that?
Inch people. What a.
Well, no. His posse, his backing band. I like them. I like his, you know that. But
yeah,
they were on there, and they were just about to get to I raised my hand to ask a question. It was about Black fatherhood, and that was when he was still on good terms with Royce White. And he, I asked, can I just put this out there rhetorically, because I thought I had a great point to make. And he snickered at it and said, rhetorical. He's like because he had said he had to go to bed. He was tired and had to go to bed. And that left such a bad taste in my mouth, to get to the point where what I was going to say was going to be acknowledged by this, not just his audience, but by him and the people who make the podcast. I felt were an appropriate audience for this point. And I just felt so yucky for wanting that recognition. And then the other day, I happened to get a notification from Substack that Rob Henderson, who's a Substacker, one of these heterodox, public intellectual type figures, he was doing a live, and I just happened to be on it. And I said a few things, and he read them and acknowledged them. And I felt good. And then after it was over, I felt gross for wanting it. So it made me go, you know what? I think my direction
Why
is
gross?
I don't know. It did not feel good. And those were mostly positive. There was a couple things I said that he kind of dismissed, but it was that moment of like, oh, my thing got read. And, there were in like a small scale enough people, a manageable scale, that he could read every comment. And I just didn't like the feeling that I was hungry for that and willing to go anywhere to get it. I'm like, are these my people? In order for me to be like, I'm not in the Fearless Army. I'm a big fan of Whitlock, but I'm not about to step into the guise of the kind of the person with the kind of checklist that I think he would be looking for. I would certainly want to speak openly, right, among his audience, but I don't like that feeling of like, oh, I'm presenting as if I belong here, when we don't know whether the host of the platform would deem me as somebody who belongs. And I was like, you know what, man, I don't think I want to be trawling for this kind of recognition. I just want to create my own thing with people. My own Zooms.
I find that hilarious. You're acting like the creator, the person who puts something out in the world, gets to control the fans and the person who enjoys and interacts with the content.
I guess we're gonna. Okay, so that sparks this. let's bring it down to the more gut, like at the root of it. If these people who have this platform based on a certain set of ideas and a certain like posture and intellectual ideological posture, which all of these platforms do that, right?
Without a doubt.
If they actually wouldn't like me or think who I really am, or think like, oh wow, you don't belong in our sort of little pasture, would I feel disingenuous for stepping forward and not showing myself for all my true colors? When we don't do that, and you meet somebody, you shake their hand, you kind of play along to the terms of the situation. We do this all the time. In fact, I think it's a skill. I think it's a strength, and I don't think enough people do it. Like, but the trade-off of doing that in a setting where, oh, if I got to really express who I am, you might be like, what the fuck? I just feel cheap doing that. I didn't like that I was happy to be acknowledged, and I didn't like when I was unhappy to almost get my question read and have him like scoff at it. And I never tried again to do on Fearless, and I almost never comment live with people at this point. It just, I feel dirty afterwards for some reason. Like, oh my God, notice me. Nah, fuck that. I'll do my own thing with people, and hopefully that won't feel gross. I mean, look, I think if I got to an audience enough that wanted to do Zooms, I think I would fucking love that. Just shooting the shit with people. But what if it gets to, can you say something to my, like, what if it feels like they want a little bit of that glow when I just think I'm showing up to talk? That's a weird. Anthony Fantano actually said this, and I thought this was very astute. He did a brief tour of like small little rock club venues. And he said, having a level of fame poisons the interaction that you have with people, because they are walking up to you with this expectation. But the thing is, then, if they didn't know who you were, you wouldn't be having the interaction with them at all. He didn't say that part. That's me adding. But it's like, I totally get what he's saying. So look,
I think.
Uh-oh, here comes Darth Maul, the voice.
Okay, so it's interesting because I think you jumped back and forth between two of the things that you jumped back to.
Robot voice. Sorry, it's killing your voice. Robot voice. Yes, you got you. That's what I said, Darth Maul. You got it. No, not better. No, you can't understand a word. It sounds like Tom York's Noise album. Sounds like Tom York's Noise album that he's going to make in response to Roger Waters and people who criticize him and Johnny for their stance on Israel. It's still Tom York's Noise album. It sounds cool. It's just we can't understand the word. And even like what I'm saying is echoing into your channel, and then it's cool. I mean, it's very abrasive. Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is a fundamental disagreement that James and I have had from the very beginning. And another thing that I've sensed we disagreed on a lot, because we start to get to the edge of these. We're constantly talking about media figures and people online and people with fandoms, and obviously traditionally famous people in the quote unquote like original sense. Is I feel that having any kind of following that validates what you do distorts the self in a way that is really, really dangerous to maintaining the structural integrity of who you are. Like it is kind of like a plane going through turbulence where metal starts flying off the plane. That's what happens to yourself whenever you have a crowd of people suddenly saying, "Oh yeah, what you're saying resonates with us. We believe in what you're saying. We believe you. We agree. We concur." And how would I know that? Never having been through that. Well, I don't know that, but I've observed so many musicians and interacted with so many of them and watched like the way they respond to questions and the way they are put in a position to always be talking about this thing they made. And so much of the feedback they're getting is questions about, I put this thing out there and all you're asking me about, all I'm speaking of is your questions about me, about this thing I did. And it's this loop over and over and over. And I see how unnatural, how inorganic that is. And I feel it pushes people to a place where it kind of mutilates the self. So, yeah, and yet here I am online with a tiny, but still very appreciated following of people, wondering, well, how would I navigate this? Because inevitably that's going to happen. How do you not end up hating the fact that all you're getting is validation and shine from your audience? Although I don't think that's where people are at today. I think it's actually healthier now because people get pushback from their audiences. And I'll wrap this up now that James is back. But that's a thing that I feel James has always been less wary of, right? Whereas I think going into this kind of relationship with a crowd, with an audience, invariably endangers the self. I've always felt like James is less cautious of that, and he can respond. But I'm really curious as to what he was saying before, too. So
how about now? How's this?
It sounds great. It sounds lovely. It sounds amazing.
Okay, awesome.
Sounds like
good ISO mode. Yeah, good ISO mode there.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. That's definitely one of our fundamental disagreements. But I want to. There is a thing that I think we also have totally disagreed on, but I think we're both fascinated with. In your description earlier, you and you went back between media and communication. They're not the same thing. They overlap. They're not the same thing. Person-to-person communication is something I'm obsessed with, as is media. Media is, more mediated communication where you're speaking to an audience of usually larger audience.
It's a turned up form of communication,
Sure.
according to your term. Yeah.
Yeah, they're two different things, but they do overlap. They have a lot of the same tools, whether it's conversation or questioning and listening. They all sort of are used for both things. And we all do at least some of the communication. Fewer of us are willing enough to venture into the media side of things. And it is interesting as you were describing your interactions and your with Whitlock and company. You were more worried about communication, and you sort of saw your fear, as I see it, your fear of Whitlock's reaction to your role in his community felt like a concern about communication and sort of and not treating his platform and his content as if it were just that, content in media. It is content in media, and it is a community. It's both things. It was always both things, but it's more clearer now, because in order to to grow things online, you grow it through getting a dedicated core. I call it the choir, and using the choir to sort of to echo it through the world and build your little narrow funnel of people who are into the thing. That's what the algorithms award you for. That's how you grow audiences. That's why you or I going on another, adjacent or slightly bigger YouTuber's channel, which totally open to doing, is how you grow. It's one of the biggest things that comes with growing. You were worried about your place in the Fearless community. And that's what makes me feel like from your explanation what made you feel gross. But in your explanation you forgot the other half, which is essentially you are consuming a piece of media. So whether you agree with that media doesn't matter. And in fact, we look through the history of cable news is the perfect example of this, because and talk radio is the perfect example of this. There were surveys back in the day of Bill O'Reilly's old show where I think it was about a third of the audience hate watched it. I'm assuming, and I don't know this for Rachel Maddow, but I would assume it's similar. Tucker Carlson, these larger platforms, many of them, people consume it not because they love it. Yes, they're maybe interested in a topic, but they hate watch it. Is that the entire audience? No. I do think it's a significant chunk of every audience. They're interested tangentially into the thing. Maybe they like the presentation. Maybe they just want to pass the time. Maybe they enjoy being angry.
Well, here's the other thing. There's tons of people. I don't even have to see the analytics, and I think you'll be with me on this. A huge percentage of Fearless or any platform's audience does not align with all of the. This is this is in line with what you're saying, but I think they're not necessarily hate watching, but even the fans who love Fearless, they're not all checking the same boxes in their life of like, oh, I have a biblical worldview, God, family, football, all those things. They like a certain aspect and they can relate to that platform on a certain level, but they're not like, they couldn't be card carrying members the way I was envisioning, my hang up was with that, right? I just felt like I was looking for love in the wrong places, kind of a thing. And I've gotten that feeling the only 2 times I've tried this. I don't like that it's like, oh, wait, am I trying to be liked here by strangers? And something feels off about that. But I think you're absolutely right that, because I even see it on comments, like live YouTube streams where people are commenting in text commenting. These people are not totally on board with the host. They like the host, but they're not like, I have to pass some sort of ideological litmus test to listen to you, right? So that's what you're saying. They're fine with it being content, and they're fine participating as a heckler or whatever, throwing their 2 cents in and being part of the content.
And most as a passive listener, because most people don't, most of the people who've watched us, and we've had, people cycle in and out, they're not going to respond whatsoever. It's fascinating. Probably according to analytics, the most listened to thing I've done back at USA Today reached 100,000 people. Right. I think, and that's without the print, the transcript side where it was several million who read the transcripts and stuff. I heard from 8. All right. And it's not that they necessarily didn't care. Some, I'm sure, did. But most people aren't going to take the time to respond. So that's that choir, that's that community that you're talking about. So what I wonder about from your whole spiel there about Whitlock and the fearless community, does it sour the fact that you can't be a part of the community? Does it sour your feelings on the content?
No, no, no. I still watch it and love it. I don't like to feel like I'm entering a cult or a church. And yes, he has overtly religious overtones, but it doesn't have to be like his Christian outlook on things for it to be a cult, right? Any channel, I don't like that feeling that I'm kind of being expected to be one of us. Something about that irks me, and I hope that as I try to grow my thing, that people won't have that sense of needing to be in one. Right? There are certain places. So on Blocked and Reported, Katie Herzog and Jesse Single's platform, one of the most successful Substacks out there, by the way. I don't think I've ever had any interaction with them whatsoever, but I love interacting with the other people who follow them. They do a weekly open thread where you just talk to each other. And I love it. You know, I don't have any, I don't feel lame doing that because I don't feel like I'm going in there wanting some kind of approval or being led by some instinctual sense of, oh, am I going to find my place here? Am I going to be liked? And when I catch myself doing that, I'm like, nah, don't go out there with your hand out for something, you know? I mean, I would go if invited, I would absolutely go on Whitlock's show as a guest or just about any show. Then I don't feel I don't think any of those feelings would come into play. It was like going into it's like he was hosting a cocktail party or something. And I knocked on the door late and got the door closed on me. And I didn't like the feeling of getting the door closed on me, but I was like, why am I knocking on this cocktail party?
I'm curious whether this is how much of this is your neuroses and how much of this is a larger factor in terms of how people consume media, where it's like they're afraid of it felt like you were almost afraid of rejection. Something like that, yeah. And I didn't like the fact that if they had read my question and it would have been like, wow, that's a great point, Sabby. I didn't like that idea either. Something about that felt uncomfortable too, because it's like he wants his juggalos, like I've said, right? Everybody wants to create their juggalo camp. Yeah. But I mean, some people, they have a criteria for what they want that to be. And I think you're right. You can't control your audience. I bet you every YouTuber has people out there that are like, wow, that person listens to my shit? Like, how weird is that, right? Like where are they even getting any point to relate to where I'm coming from, but yet they like me, right? I don't want to feel, I'm very averse to like a group belonging. I'm very like instantly, you call this neurosis, I call it awareness. I call it a heightened sense of like, I don't like the feeling of like, I'm in a group and there's certain like parameters that are expected. I like having 1 foot in, 1 foot out of a group at all times. That's how I've lived my whole life. I do not like being a card carrying member. I like having a card that says you're always welcome as a special recurring guest, but you're not the main cast of the show. Special guest star. Insert any sitcom. There's something about being enfolded into a group. This is so pronounced with me that even when I was in college and I lived in a house with mostly guys that I still keep in touch with 30 years later, I did not like the inside humor
the inside jokes among us. I didn't like that we were all starting to sound like each other. And I spent a lot of time, they would complain that they didn't see me that much. Once I'm in the fold, I will find a way to be avoidant about being wrapped up in a group. This is, for me, 10 times stronger in group dynamics than it is for relationships, for like intimate relationships, right? I don't like losing myself in that. And maybe because I'm afraid that I would make sacrifices or something. I don't know. But it's like, nah, man, I'll listen to Will. I'll go on his show and debate or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying I'll ever get invited to rise to that level, but I'm presuming that. But if the opportunity came, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do that. That I would feel I'm putting my best foot forward. Coming to your cocktail party. I mean, look, Shamika Michelle wrote back to me. She says, I'm sorry, Sabby. And I was like, man, that feels good, right? Having that interaction. It wasn't quite like, will you call my friend JB because he really likes your stuff? It wasn't quite to that degree, but it feels good to have that. And is it on a false pretense, right? With these media figures. Again, your thing, communication versus media.
Yeah, like I think reading into that reaction, I think the more I hear you, the less I think this is more your construction. I think most interactions with media aren't that.
You don't think people want approval or to belong with the hosts of their, you don't think they have some sort of paternalistic?
But they're not like quaking in their boots. I mean, like,
quaking
like
in my boots. I just didn't feel good about it. I wasn't like, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I
felt apprehensive.
I think your apprehension is, I think that's beyond, I think, most folks.
What I'm saying is going into the arena of being as a guest and unpacking my ideas and being me would feel a lot more comfortable than, hey, we're having this happy hour down the bar kind of vibe online.
I think most people are the opposite.
Right. Well, then I'm built for one more than the other.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you want to wrap this?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
For sure.
Go ahead.
Well, no. I don't know where exactly to wrap it, other than, Santa Claus goes straight to the ghetto. I'm excited for Christmas.
Yeah. What do you want for Christmas?
Man, to get personally disclosing, I would love to have a steady position, like a job, basically. And also, I already got a Christmas present early, which is now I have somebody to do a weekly panel. We're setting out to do weekly. Let's keep our fingers crossed and knock wood. Panel discussions about music. Like the first topic we're going to do in the new year is first albums we hated, sophomore albums we loved by the same artist. Things like that, like these fun music panels. And I have somebody who's into doing it with me, and we're getting our ideas together and different little clusters of people. And man, that felt like this just happened 2 nights ago where I was having this talk, and it felt like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, like a real precious thing. So that's a Christmas gift I already got. But the other thing would be keep growing, finding a way to integrate this all into a routine that I'm not driving myself crazy and that I'm not leaving a bunch of stuff unfinished. It's been a huge issue, my entire life. And like I said, a job, or as opposed to a quote unquote job, just enough progress in this domain that it's like, nah, stick with making your fucking thing. Just enough of an encouragement in that direction would be fine. Cool. What about you?
Well, I'll take it on two lanes like you did. I want to fulfill my destiny of becoming a media and communication public intellectual. That's a lot to do in a year. But why? Why the hell not? As for a physical, tangible thing in life, I'm notoriously a hard person to get a gift for. People don't know what to do. I confound them. I was asked a couple weeks ago to give a list, and I was like, why you want to know my favorite things? Like, why
Come
would I do that?
on, maybe you are Spock. Come on.
Why do I
You
do
could at
that?
least. You could at least. Oh my god. You could at least give because was this from your partner?
No,
Oh, okay. Can you say who it is?
it was at my day job.
Okay. I mean, because they want some sense of what you like, obviously.
Why would I want to do that?
You're gonna Scrooge somebody out of giving them a list for something they want to get you.
Humbug.
I don't know what's. I mean, that is. I don't know. Talk about neurosis. That is really.
I
know you didn't mean
behind,
neurosis disparagingly. I know you didn't mean it.
No, I didn't. But I stand behind my neurotic sense. I am who I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am in the paper, in the news, everywhere? I am
what I am. Maybe listen. Maybe Finn McKenty should have watched more Popeye. I am what I am.
Or listen to more Eminem.
Right, or doing new metal clips. You know, look, not to sidetrack this thing about Christmas, but is there something to be said? Or is there still something to be said? You can calculate and follow the audience analytics. Sure, of course, it makes sense. What about just showing up and sticking to your guns? Is that still doable? I mean, why can't people just do that?
On social media platforms like
yes,
like YouTube,
like this one, yes.
I think I think we already went into it. The platform punishes you. So
okay.
Can you I mean, look, I think my channel is a great example of this. Like, there are clearly things that work better on my channel than not. Like, if we went and did more controversy stuff, if I went and if I took, Finn McKenty will probably do well. But like I think of one like Andrew Huberman that we did together a few months ago. They did really well. Did thousands of views, and the shorts did even better. So like there are certain things that you sort of, if you want to like keep one cohesive thing and do it all on one channel, you are tempting the YouTube gods. You are pissing them off.
Let me ask you this though, in the bigger picture, maybe not in this moment we're in right now, but there have always been what are called quote unquote disruptors, right? When the Ramones started, and I know this is a completely different paradigm, completely different era. There's always these people in every industry that are like, no, you can't do it that way. You can't do it. That's crazy. That's garbage. That's not the way it's done. And then they come and reinvent the rules. How possible is that in this? Can we get to there?
YouTube would have to change the rules. The difference is something like the Ramones is that it's a bunch of choices that are made by a series of, at that point radio stations, and we're not even talking about the consolidated radio station groups that we have today. We're talking about way many more people making decisions that catapulted them and most radio stars really even into the 90s, even 2000s, into stardom.
Right. Well, and the Ramones didn't sell well. I should also say that they never had a hit, and they didn't
Yeah.
sell. But you're right. There were a bunch of different institutional stages that could have. Whereas YouTube is one. It's like
you can't even be a major touring act without jumping through Live Nation's, hoops. It becomes virtually impossible to do it. Theo Von had an interesting video on this. He does these all call-in episodes. And
actual calls.
Yeah, from people, from fans, and he was talking about like Ticketmaster and the fact that basically he tries to sell his stuff around Ticketmaster because they jack up fees, and he tries to sell his merch around the venues because they jack up the fees on top of it. In some cases, adding 20-30% to the price of merchandise, and it's stuff that the star doesn't get. Like there are, even in that case, it's a series of gatekeepers that are marking the lines on the road for artists. And YouTube is just one. They can tomorrow decide that, hey, we're no longer going to make you go narrow and deep on content, and you can just make engaging stuff and of any content type on your channel, and we won't punish you for it. They can do it tomorrow. They won't, but they can. So what he would have to do is branch out from YouTube, which would be the uncomfortable thing. He's making a lot of money. He's very comfortable in this world, Finn McKenty. So, when you are making a bunch from one passive income stream, you're captured by that world unless you diversify. He could go to podcasting. He could probably take a chunk of his audience with him. He could go to Rumble. He might already be there. I don't know. He could go to focus on X or Blue Sky or Facebook, and and focus in that case more on his ads to drive the money. His the ads that he gets on the top of his videos. And obviously he's already on Twitch, so like he'd have to broaden his revenue sources and just say, okay, so maybe I take a hit in my views per video, but I'm getting more avenues of money that maybe adds up to what I was going to make before or more.
Well, there you go. JB just laid it out for y'all. Like, I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy, but it is.
He could have done it. Why didn't he is the interesting question.
Right, especially if he's aware. If he's a marketer, you think if marketing is his thing, you think he'd be aware that you want to diversify, because you wouldn't want to be vulnerable to one platform's whims anyway. You've been saying this forever. They can decide to change their rules one way or the other in a way that hurts you. Here's the thing. Why wouldn't it be in their best interest to let people generate more hits as generalists? Because wouldn't they just benefit from the traffic?
No. But it's like forcing me to okay, so let's say I am punk rock MBA. Or let's say I'm a apostate music journalist. Let's get start from scratch. Apostate music journalist channel. All right, an apostate music journalist channel is doing these long form journalism pieces on music, and it's a specific type of music. Pick a genre.
Jesus. Acid jazz.
Okay, so apostate music journalist is doing these long form news like pieces on acid jazz, and okay, great, he's successful. So you know what he's gonna do? He wants to clip them up, but the clip version isn't as you know, those aren't getting the type of traction that the other one is. So what does apostate music journalist do with his clips? He creates a second channel. What's better for YouTube? You having one channel or you having two channels?
Yeah, it's easier to serve people if you can tell them exactly what. No, for them, I mean, for YouTube, it's easier to get it, to deliver it to the audience if they can micro target the demand and appeal and say, look, we've got acid jazz. This.
Yeah.
You want to hear about Sebby talking about his dog, or even a different genre, or even a different take on acid jazz, a different style of take, right? It could still even be the same lane, but they want you to stay. It could be the same road. They want you to stay in the same lane. I guess it's easier for them to
yes, and it's better for them to have more channels.
Okay. Well, I mean.
So if you are, so let's say you want to do clips, and let's say like I've even heard that shorts do better on their own dedicated channel. So so acid apostate music journalist, acid jazz clips, apostate music journalist, acid jazz shorts. You know, like, so all of a sudden this goes from one channel to three, and that's what they want. They want you to do more. They want you to do the work. They don't want to have to do the work for you.
Okay, well, I mean, but look, right? Because like Jason Whitlock has Jason Whitlock clips. Glenn Lowry has, I think it's Glenn Lowry clips or highlights or something. It might be clips. Like that. Right. Look, I think we can take the Finn McKenty story and take from that exactly what you're saying, which is like, if you want to exist in this realm, you're going to have to find a way to not lose yourself in the process of accentuating only one aspect of who you are. And you're going to have to find a way to spread your arms out and maybe grow more arms to manage these different channels. And if you have a successful channel, though, you should have the resources to be able to do that easier than somebody starting from scratch.
Oh, and also I'd like to make an appeal to Mr. McKenty. Anytime you want to come on, discuss this with us.
I'd love to talk.
Let's discuss. I'd love to go and understand where you're coming from. You got a relatively big fan over there in the Sapster. You know, we believe in you. We want to know who's right, who's wrong, and I got a lot more questions for you. So please, we'd love to see you.
As do I. James,
yes.
Humbug Brown. I hope you will give people at work a list of things, some guideline as to, I mean, they're probably looking to get you like a small, nothing major, right? Like not like an extravagant gift from work. It's a work gift.
Humbug.
These are the rituals human beings, these are the gestures human beings make to show each other appreciation. You are aware that you're being appreciated, right? That this is a way of saying, James, we appreciate you being here. So we want to show that to you by giving you something that you will enjoy using or looking at or being reminded of our appreciation. These are the things that keep human civilization intact. And I'm being facetious here, but like, come on. Put on a Santa hat, James. It feels good, man. Come on. Let people give you gifts.
Bah humbug.
Shit, I wish I had people like knocking on the door to give me stuff. I'd be like, and I like this, and I like this, and I like this, and on certain days I like this kind of thing. And yeah, and if you really want to go a little bit deeper, you might want to try this. I could totally that kind of list. So if anybody wants to give me anything, I'm happy to write to Santa.
Bah humbug.
All right. Well, on that note, what are you doing? I know you do holidays now. You talked about this on a previous live stream. You and your partner are doing this together, I presume?
Yeah. She's got family coming into town. I got family in town. I got gifts to give to folks. I gave her gift. She requested something, a little cart for her garden. She likes to grow stuff.
Okay, that's a great gift.
So she has this sort of outdoor, basically half the backyard's a freaking like growing vegetables and such. So got her that. So she's got 2 phases really of her family, plus one member of her family will stay with us for a bit. And we'll go see my mom and sister and such. And yeah, it'll be a scene.
What do you enjoy doing at Christmas that's not necessarily a Christmassy thing to do, tradition or whatever, but like, like some people like watching the NBA, some people like watching It's a Wonderful Life, some people like going on a hike, like maybe not the main event, but what if anything is something you enjoy doing at that time that's just something you do?
I used to be really into watching the NBA, and we didn't talk about that at all. I mean, that's a whole conversation I'm actually willing to go to. That's worth another half hour if you're into it. But I used to watch it all day on Christmas when I could. I haven't in years. And most of America agrees with me. So
yeah.
So and yes, Adam Silver, your product is shit. It has been shit for a long time. It's not new that it's shit. It's been shit for a very long time. I'll watch a little bit of the Netflix NFL games. What do I like doing on Christmas? That's not Christmassy.
Or that's not the main, dinner with the family or whatever, or giving presents. The more sort of tertiary things that add up to
nothing. I mean it. It's just not like it's not. Look, I'm not at war with it.
I know.
This is a year where I have plans. There are things I need to do to get towards some of my larger goals. I need to rest. But I don't have a specific thing that I enjoy in addition, really. It'll be great to spend some time with, some of the family and such, but yeah. Again,
I think
people I haven't talked to a lot.
The robot voice is there, but I think I know one thing you would have if you were in a position to do it, I feel like if you were working a broadcast on Christmas, I feel like you would enjoy that.
Oh, I loved working on Christmas. Is Robot Voice still there?
Nope.
Yeah, I loved working on Christmas. I did that. I did that at News 10. I did at WXXI. I enjoyed it. I did newscasts on Christmas morning, and there was basically nothing to talk about. But I put it together. You do your best. I could see myself doing that at some point. Maybe I should do a 24-hour Christmas Day live stream.
That'd be cool. That'd be really funny. Well, yeah, man, we're winding down to the end of the year, and you know, I most look forward to starting the year. I mean, you know, who doesn't? But just starting the year on a more solid footing, hitting the ground running, tying up loose ends, you know, it's the standard, but just being on more solid footing. I would prefer to be going into a time of like vacation-y kind of mode. I that's easier to do when you know you're on solid ground, you know, once the new year starts. And, you know, looking around for work and stuff doesn't feel like on solid ground. So, but I'll make the most of it. And yeah, man, I hope you have a decent time, at least, if not a great time.
Oh, I think it'll be fine. I think I'm not expecting to have a bad time at all.
No. And you enjoy the family gathering stuff. You talked about this last time for Thanksgiving.
It doesn't really bug me anymore. I'm looking forward to some things. Yeah, it doesn't bug me anymore.
Cool.
Okay. Well, plug yourself away, Savvy.
feedbackdef.substack.com and also at feedbackdef on YouTube. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm working on a Substack post now that I'm just so thrilled about. It's been consuming me for days. And when I get done here, I'm going to take a shower, have some tuna fish sandwich for lunch, get back on this. It is a response to a New York Times piece titled, "Can Pop Culture Be Great? Can we make pop culture great again?" And I got things in there referencing Rob Zombie, Joseph Campbell. There's a technology writer named Douglas Rushkoff.
Oh, yeah.
Ross Barkan, who I first heard about on Ethan Strauss's podcast. He's a political commentator / writer / Substacker. I got a lot in here, and I am thrilled to be working on this piece. So I'm trying to get it done before Christmas so I can post it. You know, I was hoping to post it today. I don't think that's going to happen.
This sounds right up my alley.
I hope it will be. I mean, it touches on things that let's just say it's certainly germane to your area of focus.
Yeah, Douglas Rushkoff in particular, he was, definitely influential for young James.
Okay. Well, I am tagging him. I have a quote from the preface of his book Present Shock from 2013. I'll give away one of sort of the main premise is that right around that time in the late aughts, I'm having an echo that's a robot voice from your channel, so maybe we can there's like a delay effect where it's repeating what I'm doing, what I'm saying with a robot voice. Let's see now. Okay, perfect. Oh well. So basically, the thing that sparked this was somewhere between the late aughts and like 2014. I remember by 2014, I arrived at this conclusion concretely that there was a widespread anxiety reflecting in the culture that the time period we were living in, the present, didn't have a character of its own, and that we were no longer anchored to a moment. And so the response to this was to reach back to the past to try to recapture that. It's way more involved than that, but that's the thing that's where I start. And I go from there for, I don't know, something like 5,000 words or something. Oh, I didn't hear you. Can't hear you still. Can't hear you at all. Do you want to unplug and try again real quick so I can hear what you're saying? I don't understand. It's like the robot is there. And what else can I say about this piece? I've been so immersed in it. It's so wonderful to get so wrapped up in something you're doing, and then to just take your chances and throw it out there. And like I said, I'm tagging some of the people that I reference, whose work I'm referencing in the piece, hoping they respond, of course, or hoping someone responds. But for the sheer joy of doing it, that will have to be reward in and of itself. Yes, I'm expecting some kind of response, but I've had that feeling before, like, oh man, this is going to be my big thing. This is going to make a splash. And it doesn't necessarily always do that, at least right off the bat. What were you saying, James?
Have you heard of the Merchants of Cool?
I have not.
Now, this was one of my first entries into media theory back when I was in high school. There was a frontline doc called The Merchants of Cool, hosted and written by Douglas Rushkoff. And what he did was detail the development of rock stars, pop stars in music, in fashion, by the old sort of music record company machinations, for the most part, where they would send these cool scouts into underground shows. At that time, Insane Clown Posse, they were and they would take
hard to believe they were underground once, right? Hard to believe they were underground once.
They would take elements of the stuff that they were wearing, and the kids there were wearing, and they would paste it on up and coming stars that were going through the record company systems. And Haley Williams, I believe her name is, from what's the name of the band?
I know
Paramore?
Yeah.
Is, I believe, one of the people who were up and coming through that doc, where essentially, that group was pretty much constructed. It's not that it's not a real band. It's just that, some bands, as through the history of music, some are, assembled, and some come together, whether they're friends or, schoolmates. Radiohead were schoolmates. So bands come together in different ways. Sometimes it's a lead singer who's just looking for pieces and they're bringing them together. And another really great element from that documentary, and I think we should absolutely both watch it because it's fantastic. I'd love to revisit this. They talked to marketers and we do this customer persona thing in marketing these days. They came up with the male teenage archetype that they were marketing to, in this case called the mook. And they were building things that would appeal to the mook. This was a teenage white male who were wearing the khakis, the faded shirts. Like they had this whole picture of the mook that they were crafting, that they were seeking artists and content that would appeal to the mook, whether it's through MTV and other outlets. And it's a fascinating, it's a process that continues to this day. Different forms, obviously. But yeah, it's a great documentary.
Well, then, I mean, that's Finn McKenty needs to talk to Douglas Rushkoff and rejuvenate his, because that's right up his alley.
But the thing is, yeah, but the thing is, like, Rushkoff, even then, like, was railing against it. But, you know,
well, I should say
he rails against it.
Yes, and he seems fascinating. I just discovered him the other day, and I think it was because, in fact, I'm almost certain, it's because I was typing on my phone in my Google Drafts, my notes for this piece, and then Substack put him in my notes because I was using the terms present and past a lot, and then he posted a note about how he was going on, I forgot what network it was. He said, yeah, I wrote the book in 2013, but I'm about to do an interview on some network about Present Shock, his book. And I was like, oh, well, the algorithm helped me with my story there because it's completely like aligns with what I'm saying. And I should have mentioned my question, the central question of my piece is, were we better off? Like we've all, like, so many people, and all of us are feeling this, are lamenting this idea that we have so few shared experiences. The Super Bowl being one of the, and the NFL in general being one of the few things that have survived. But were we actually better off when we had that, not monoculture, but when we had the funnel and we all were connected to the funnel? And is it only a negative that we've lost that? And what is behind? So I don't have an answer for you right now, but you know, because his New York Times piece is like, you know, lamenting like, oh man, it would be so nice if we, you know, if we had that back, and I'm like, well, is it necessarily all bad that we don't? I think, and I point out certain things that I think are beneficial to not having. Yes. Listen, and I admit in the piece, I was around for Seinfeld. I grew up in the 80s. I saw Jaws in the theater when it came out. Like, that's a big, I completely understand to have these things that resonate on this mass scale. I saw Star Wars in the theater at age 6. I remember the wait for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I remember the excitement just coursing through the entire, you know, world. It felt like to me at the time, right? I'm not saying, oh, fuck that. Obviously not. But is this not a trade-off though? And if we want that back, then what choices do we make to try to regain some of it? This is what I explore, you know, with Rob Zombie and Joseph Campbell in there.
That's awesome. I would love the fuck out of that. I object to both constructions.
And write a rebuttal to my rebuttal of the New York Times.
Okay, so in short, you know how I've often told you that there's not one Facebook.
There's
There
a billion,
are
whatever,
yeah,
8
now
billion
it's
or whatever.
2 billion Facebooks. Okay, I'll play out this further. There are 2 billion Facebooks within one Facebook.
Mhm.
All right. The funnel never went away. The funnel just changed.
Mhm.
There are fewer, and I think I believe that the same that as a mass culture that there's the same amount of things reach us all.
Now
There's
there's
just a
just
lot
more of the things
more.
that don't.
Yes.
So it creates the illusion. I like that idea, actually. And that lines up with what I had always felt in the past. And Klosterman makes a cameo in my piece too, because I
Course.
say the Klosterman and the people at the Ringer never would have been aware of, never would talk about the things that were always going on at the sub mass level. So when I would go to Tower Records in the late 80s, they had a magazine, a physical magazine named Pulse. You understood when you walked in the store, they're just advertising to you to try to get you to buy things. But it had really good writing. And they would cover things at the various scales. Like they'd cover the huge, and they'd be plugging things that are a little bit more on the sort of underground. And it was a nice blend of those things. What I resent about people like the author of this New York Times piece and so many others, Ross Douthat is his name. He's a columnist for the New York Times.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Is it's like, what about all the other stuff that was already there was always micro niche stuff going on. And here's the flip side of what I would argue about the present tense that I think is better than the old system. I wrote about this earlier this year, but the band Extreme had a song where, like, the guitar solo, all these people, YouTubers were breaking down the guitar solo and playing the guitar solo, and it became this viral YouTube sensation for this single. Now, the last time Extreme had a radio hit was More Than Words, which is like the early 90s, 92, maybe 91, 92. So by the old system, if we had it the way it used to be, they would be long gone from relevance. Now, Extreme fans can all congregate online, can find each other, and they're not necessarily moving the needle on mass culture. They're having their viral moment, but they don't need necessarily a viral moment. Their fans are going to find them. So if you ask the fans of Extreme, hey, what would you rather have? Would you rather go to the old way where this band isn't even fucking together anymore? And you're like in the asteroid belt of space trash in terms of culture? Or would you rather have it now where, people who love Joy Division or goth or, things that are not huge, you can find a place for this now. You can still find your own favorite cultural brew. And I think that's a wonderful thing. But the New York Times is going to, and so all these other people are going to, oh my God, we just don't have big, huge pop stars we all love anymore other than Taylor Swift.
No,
Okay.
I don't think that's why I don't think that's what their motivation.
What is their motivation?
Donald Trump.
That's an interesting angle. How does that connect? Okay. I'm curious.
Okay, it's the critique. It's the post-election critique. It's the fact that, oh my God, like he went and talked to all these people in their little MAGA podcast land, and we talked to all of America, but these people over here, they heard him, they heard this noxious orange dictator guy in these other worlds. Oh my God, we need monoculture.
Yeah, we want it back because we can be the controllers of it. We can be the gatekeepers of it. Oh, no. And I don't want to give it away here. But then I detour. Oh,
go ahead. So what you're seeing and what we're seeing in a million different ways, especially in homes of mainstream media, where we're seeing these outlets and people writing different variations of, oh my God, what have we done? We've allowed Donald Trump to get reelected without saying that Donald Trump's being
yeah.
reelected by this system.
And it's
Without,
yes,
without them realizing that they're within the same exact system. And
right. No. So I do talk about this, not specifically with Donald Trump, but I do, and yes, I agree with you. It's clearly a sense that they want to be the ones at the valve of what is truth on every level. So I talk about this in the piece. The same people that wanted to decide they wanted to be the gatekeepers of culture are the same people that would gatekeep in terms of science, medicine, politics. And I said, look, it's harder to exist in an information landscape where there's 5 million options and you don't know what you don't know what the hell's coming at you. But if you do the work and you apply some skepticism and some, good faith analysis of every angle, I said, I'll take my chances with the Tower of Babel rather than having the New York Times tell me what, antidepressants are good for you and what, all this other stuff. I'll take my chances in the ruins of that and have to do the extra bit of work than have somebody say, oh, well, we can't decide who the stars are anymore. It really is too bad there aren't any stars anymore because we wanted to be the ones deciding. So.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. I think it is about control and feeling like a loss of control. It's a denial that's gone on for the last few decades that like the shared narrative has dissolved long ago. Like but people they felt more in control, especially on the left. There was still more of a thought that, hey, we understood where this is going. Oh, it's gone somewhere that we don't understand now. So we must rationalize what's happened.
Sure. As some sort of affront to the laws of the universe.
Therefore, it's kind of like the Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden situation. Bernie was on the verge of, he was going to win a nomination. So same thing with Hillary Clinton as well. So, okay, what do we do? Well, we just change the rules. and you can't do that with this stuff. We're too far gone. There's no way to put the genie back in the bottle. It's like one of the interesting that Mark Andreessen interview with Rogan, where he mentioned how the Biden administration at this point, within this year, this had told him and a bunch of other billionaires, Silicon Valley billionaires, that they were going to try to put AI in a bottle. Like what? Like what? Like what are you talking about? Like you're going to try to like control AI now? Now is when you're going to try to control AI?
Sure.
Like
sure.
What do you like? What planet are you on? It's the sort of strange. It's an arrogance. And
hubris is, I think, is a better word, but yes, I agree with you.
Yes. Hubris is a better word. Yes, absolutely. But it's a disconnect from reality.
Yeah, there was a recent piece in Variety. I think it was Variety, and I hope I'm right on that, or I hope I'm not mistaken, where they talked about Trump's appearance on Flagrant 2 and the tone, the way they spun. They referred to Andrew Schultz as a bro commentator, like their ignorance of what, and Theo Von too, which I think is so unfair. Such a touristy way of looking at the natives as just like whatever you think they are, and you're not really paying attention enough or caring enough to really see these realms of media for what they are, and you just have to look at them as a mook, basically.
Yeah.
But like a yucky kind of mook, like a pathological mook, right? And it's just that that bias, that blindness, like these bro-y comics, and the tone of it was just dripping with how dare a presidential candidate go to this place. That's what explains why he won, because they're trolling in the gutter with they're pandering to the, he's being a demagogue to all these people, to all these bro-y types who want the raw meat. And it's like, man, shut the fuck up. Like you are being pushed out and you're complaining about, it's such a whiny way of looking at things. Like, well, why can't I be in the office? Like, your ass has been put out to the curb. You're lucky you have a job for Variety. You're lucky there are still these delusional, like, last holdout kind of outposts beaming this like what's the word I'm looking for? Complete like detachment from reality. This unreality, beaming it out to the last few people who want to lap that up. Come on, man, give it up. Just at least give people a fair shake. Don't start branding and labeling people. It's just so gross. And it's desperate. The reason why it doesn't offend me as much is because you can see how desperate it is. And I think you're spot on with, like, this is why they want pop culture to come back the way it was, so that they can have their hands on the levers.
It's kind of funny. It's like it's wanting it both ways all the time. It's look, I got no issue with trans folks. But it is mono. It's the exact opposite of monoculture. And in celebration of this small, tiny group, and elevation and defense and all this stuff, there's all this focus on it. And that's fine. But, like, if we're going to do that, where we're going to, like, go narrow and zoom in on different groups, we're going to slice and dice us into our demographic cohorts, and that's how we're going to navigate society that way, which the left has leaned into extremely hard. The right does it to a degree, but it's not as hard, and it's not the chief focus.
It's a little more subtle, or it's a lot more subtle.
I'd say it's a lot more subtle. Yes. Yeah. It's more pocketbook, classish, which is the argument that Bernie Sanders has made, basically. Like, basically, you need to do more of a class-based approach to reaching out to the American people, and I think he's right.
Absolutely.
And instead of focusing on identity politics like crazy, I know you smack around not Joseph Campbell, but Jordan Peterson a lot. I said Joseph Campbell because Joseph Campbell his impact on Jordan Peterson is huge. There's a direct line. He's a son of Joseph Campbell,
a disciple, an acolyte of Joseph Campbell.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Ideological child of direct descendant. But like one of the things that drew me to him was how willfully he was, and clearly and full-throatedly he denounced identity politics and the destructive nature of them, and how well he articulated that this isn't good for society. This isn't even good for the people who are pushing this.
Mm-hmm. Or for the people on whose behalf it's being pushed.
Yeah.
It's not good for them either.
So yeah. So how can you like want monoculture and push hard for identity politics unless you want an authoritarian? That's where the equity regime is, where it's like, yeah, we want an authoritarian version of this. And
well,
I hate that.
Well, and to bring this full circle, I actually don't have. I'm with Jordan Peterson at that stage of his emergence into public consciousness. And I actually, when he does his Q&A sessions, he's sitting at a little desk, like it looks like his basement, or not his basement, but like around the corner from his den. It's like a little corner of his home.
Yeah.
And he just talks about topics. I still really value him, and I think he's got a like really fascinating intellect when he's strictly exploring ideas and concepts. I think he's a very powerful thinker. But I think what destroyed him, in my view, was him playing into being a media sensation and so thirstily going after that to the point where it eroded and created this character. And I don't love the character. I still love a lot of his ideas. And I completely agree with you. Identity politics, I've argued for a long time, is covert class warfare. Coming from the top, from the elite class, giving people something that is actually a poison pill and is like a slow motion kind of mind bomb or a flesh-eating virus way of looking at the world that actually pulls people downward the more they buy into it. It's like a quicksand, and you think you're fighting for empowerment and you think you're being recognized and being respected, and the more you buy into it, the worse and worse it pulls you down. And I more and more feel like this was intent. There was some intent behind this, and I don't have proof of this, and we can debate it, but it's so divisive, so corrosive to the people who buy into it. It's so destructive when you walk around wanting validation and thinking that you're so brittle that you're going to break. There's no more effective way to actually oppress people than to have them buy into that and thinking you're propping them up. It's really, man, I hope we're at the end of that. And I think you're right that we're not. I think there's still a lot of fight left to undo the damage of that.
Agreed.
But yeah, pop culture,
So everybody check me out at mediastudies.substack.com and jamesbrowntv.substack.com. I already got a couple new followers from this live, I think. So
nice.
That's awesome.
Well, what about your chainsaw channel? You're not gonna plug that?
Totally going to do chainsaws. And I'm going to be experimenting with some new YouTube style videos. I have a lot to say about George Stephanopoulos.
Okay.
And his, and the fact that ABC paid $15 million to instead of fighting the libel lawsuit against Donald Trump.
Hmm. Yeah, and also your Substack too, where you do the radio segments.
Yes.
That's
jamesbrowntv.substack.com.
Right, and you're going to be delivering, because you do those every day on holidays.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't do them live on the holiday. Yeah. But you post one prepared segment.
Yeah, I'm working on I'm trying to decide which one is going to be my Christmas and Christmas Eve ones.
I'm excited because I like those a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I mean, for a lot of people, that little dose of the media figure they want to hear from is just enough to get them to lift their spirits on an important day.
Well, so, I hope they like me. Yeah, they like me. They really like me.
They like my bah humbug. All right, man. Well, thank you again for inviting me on to talk about this stuff.
We'll do it again soon.
For sure. Merry Christmas,
All right.
everybody. In spite
Merry
of
Christmas.
James.
Bah humbug.